Because I'll have the slides.
Because, I mean, if anything, we want the slides to be showing, not me.
I edit it so that you have both.
Cool.
I can do that.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Nina and I kind of wanted to spend some time talking about SHM Leadership Academy. Timing-wise, it's good because our vacation requests are due soon. So if you want to go, it's good to think about it now and try to plan your year accordingly. So there are 3 tracks, and we'll kind of talk about them. I'll spend the first maybe 20, 25 minutes of this going through a whirlwind about what I saw, and then Nina wants to spend the second half going through a more in-depth activity. So we have no conflicts of interest to disclose.
Has anyone been to a leadership academy or fellowship or anything like that here?
Just RUH's internal one.
And you're part of SGI and LEAD this year, right? So you've started.
I used to click on the one for AIM,
Yeah.
and it would be like $4,500 or something. Whoa!
Oh wow.
So you've looked into it and then been like, Okay. And has anyone else been to the Academic Hospice Academy? I don't think so. But Shoba, I know you've been to QC, so that was another SHM program.
I went.
And you've been to QC as well. Okay. So those are kind of the big ones that I think of run through SHM and some of the other big societies. Sometimes they partner. So I'll kind of just go over like what Leadership Academy is. There are 3 tracks, and I'll go through my track that I went through in very, very brief detail, and then we'll do the activity with me now. So when is it? It's in October. It's in Vancouver this year, which I really want to go, but yeah, so even if it's just to go to Vancouver, not a bad place to visit. We were in Arizona last year, which was not bad for October, because it was also like this warm, hot weather that was like quite glorious, and the vitamin D that I obtained was amazing. But October 22nd to 25th, most of you are maybe a little bit more senior to me, but so SHM Leadership Academy, there are 3 tracks. You could take any of the 3 in any order. But the logical order, to me, seems to be Strategic Essentials, and then some combination of 2 versus 3, depending on what's full. So Strategic Essentials, Influential Management, and Mastering Teamwork. Welcome! We're talking about SHM Leadership Academy. That's in October of this year. Alternatively, for those people who are within their first 1 to 3 years of being a hospitalist, I actually really think the Academic Hospitalist Academy is a really good thing to attend. And I think myself, I think Samir has gone, Ritu has gone. If you have any questions about that, we could kind of talk about that too. I think that's the best thing for 1 to 3 years, but if you're more than 3 years out and you have leadership skills, I would not go to that, and I would think about one of these tracks. So the question is, why attend? Really, if you want to develop a framework for leadership. I always walk away from these things with about like a 6-step process for XYZ thing or a 4-point process for things, and that's very helpful for me to just have some concept of structure to things that I might already be doing. It's always very helpful because they're always talking about the state of hospital medicine. So I think we're pretty good at talking about what's happening outside, but really to see it and hear it from people who are living it, I always find very helpful. Networking, which I always think is kind of a slimy word, like networking, but it actually is not. Really, you just end up meeting a bunch of people who want to learn about your experiences and you their experiences, both the faculty and attendees. It's really nice, especially because then when you go to the national meeting with 3,000 people, I actually know some people, so it's nice to kind of catch up. I always feel inspired, gathering a bunch of ideas to bring home, and therefore increases my job satisfaction, because sometimes with the daily grind, why is it like this, why is it like that? It gives me a chance to reflect and take a step back. So those are some of the whys, so that when we talk about what, hopefully it'll gather this one. So October, attend if you want to simply become a leader, and what's nice about it is that it's a 3-day retreat with nothing before or after, so as long as you have those 3 days, you can get a lot out of it. We'll talk about my track, and then Nina did both of the other tracks, so if you want to talk to us in more detail about what that is, we can do that kind of after. So Strategic Essentials, it's 4 days, and I'm going to try to summarize 4 days in 20 minutes, which means it's really going to be high level. One of my thoughts, though, was that, honestly, a lot of the stuff that I learned, I felt like I had learned through RUH, so I'm almost not sure people need to go to this one. And so part of my thinking was like, if I give the concepts here, and to you, you feel like they're things you already know, then I would actually move on to influential management or mastering teamwork. Because the one downside is, Scott, you're pointing out AIM is $4,500. This is still like $2,000 something. It's not cheap. And we get $1,750 in CME. If you want to go to the national meeting and this, you're spending a lot of your own money. So you want to make sure it's worth your while. So I'll go through strategic essentials, partially to give everyone a taste, also to, I think, hopefully help bring back some of the ideas that I had. And really, if to you you're like, I pretty much know all these concepts, I would actually move on to some of the other tracks. So one thing I learned was, one, we're a young field. I think a lot of people know this, but hospital medicine is only 20 years old. ER is 50 years old, and internal medicine's been around for a long time. So because of that, there's a lot of room for growth, a lot of room for change, and we're still kind of establishing our own identity. Our scope is changing. I think hospital medicine started out with, let's take over the general medicine floors. The primary care doctors can be on the outpatient side, we'll come on the inpatient side. Some stuff we're already doing. We've had co-management established here for quite a while now. Subspecialty care, we're starting to do it. Northwestern has an on-hospitalist floor. 14 West for us is becoming that. We've explored ideas of partnering with orthopedics. We certainly have our co-management service working with them. Some places actually do, the hospitals are doing critical care. Nina and I were having happy hour with one of the hospitals at Kaiser, and she basically takes this like mobile telemonitor around, and the critical care doctor sitting at home monitoring 3 hospitals, and she's like doing the exam and like talking through the patients in the ICU with them. It's pretty fascinating what some hospitals are doing out there. Palliative care, procedure services. I know Brian and here you're working on maybe getting a procedure service started. We've met some folks at other institutions that have been successful in that. SNFists are things that are happening, this whole medical home idea. We've also started to identify quality is one of our big focuses. IT, like Jordan and Mike and Chad all working on the IT component, and ultimately we're becoming leaders in change in hospital medicine. I also thought it was pretty interesting, there are more kinds of hospitalists now. So we are adult hospitalists, we have people like Beth and Chris who are peds hospitalists. Acute care surgeons are becoming surgicalists, where they just do surgeries in hospitalized patients. Laborists, so OBs are just coming in to do shifts, and they just deliver babies during that time. Neurology is doing something similar, ortho, psychiatry. So I think it's interesting that it's becoming a national trend for other specialties to essentially have hospitalists within their specialty. These are things we know. So hospitals are facing lots of challenges. Our patients are becoming increasingly complicated. The need for this care coordination is becoming increasingly recognized, and we're all being expected, we're now being very much, expected to be accountable for what we're doing and essentially to justify our salaries. So in order to be successful in managing these challenges, we have to have systems-oriented thinking, not just thinking about the individual patient now, but overall, what are we doing? Is this care we're providing high value? Are we taking care of the population around us? And every time I go to the next staff meetings, I'm really talking about what are we doing for the west side of Chicago? And how are we taking care of them globally, not just the individual patient? We have to think about how we're staffing, what kinds of providers we have, both physicians and we've talked about it, pharmacists, CRCs that we're talking about, case managers, social workers, nursing, all very important as we think about what our needs are. And then, yeah, it's just really important to have systems-oriented thinking, not just individual. Think about how the flow of money is changing, because this is very much affecting how our daily lives look. We're moving away from volume to value, things are getting bundled, we're having accountable care organizations that are coming through. And so slowly we have to start thinking about our funding sources, because again, that affects what we feel down on the ground. So like, why does ADS have to take care of 12 patients? Why not the 10 that we would like to take care of? It has to do with a lot of these things. So one thing that I took away was that if you want to have change in a hospital, we have to think like business folks, and that's not what we're trained to do, but we have to understand what the business drivers are, how that creates a hospital objective, and then how that results in the metrics. When I first came to RUH, I just remember hearing about length of stay and your patient satisfaction scores, and I was like, why should I care about any of these things? I don't care about any of these things. But the hospital cares about them, and so you kind of have to go backwards. And as I wanted to create change, I was learning that, well, you basically have to make a business argument in order to get XYZ metric change. And I'm staying kind of vague right now, but I'll try to get a little bit more specific as the slides go on. But examples of business drivers for the hospital include things like how the shifts in insurance are. And we get all these emails from RUH Health about how we're now partnering with County Care, or we're not partnering with some of the other folks anymore. Aetna Better Health, I think, was one of them. We have an aging population, the shifts in population are sometimes happening, changes in physician distribution, technology, and just general consumerism all affect what the hospital's objectives are and therefore affect the metrics that we're being measured on. So we want to know what the hospitals are measuring, things like what our market share is, how we compete with some of the other big institutions in Chicago, the big networks, what our growth rate is, quality, customer loyalty keeps coming back. Obviously we know about capacity utilization. We always want to be still at a high level, but still having throughput, so not overly clogged. What's happening with technology, staff turnover. This one I thought was really interesting from a business argument, because I kept thinking, like, how do we talk about things like burnout that we all feel and we talk about, we feel is important, but sometimes it might feel like the higher ups don't understand. If you turn burnout into staff turnover, suddenly you might get ears listening, and I thought that was kind of an interesting concept of, you can put money on it. It costs X dollars to train a new physician, so if I have X number of physicians turning over because they're burning out, you got to address this problem, and then somebody with the money will listen, potentially. Profitability, leverage, liquidity, cash flow, things like that. The other way to think about performance measures is whether they're operational, clinical, or financial. So what are the things that hospitals are looking at? It falls into one of usually these three categories. And so it's good to think about, if you're thinking of a business argument, which sector is this falling into, and then trying to leverage the right people to help you in those areas. This slide, so a lot of these slides I took actually from SHM. I just put them in my own formatting, so I can't take credit for them. I didn't love this slide, but I thought the comparison was good. So as a physician, when we're med students and residents, we're taught to be doers. We focus on these one-to-one, very personal interactions. The reactive philosophy I sort of took issue with, because I think we do try to plan ahead, but reality, someone's coming with a symptom and we react to it. We're not necessarily reaching out to find people with problems out in the community or their homes and bringing them into the hospital. They're coming on their own. We like quick gratification, especially in hospital medicine. They're here for the hospitalization. What did I do for you? We make decisions. We like having autonomy. We like advocating for our patients, and we identify with our profession. Managers, on the flip side, they're more like big picture planners and designers, thinking about more of the population, affecting lots of different people. You need to be a little bit more proactive as a manager in your philosophy, recognizing that some of your plans are long-term, so you don't always get instant gratification. In order to get things done, you have to work in a team, so delegating your work and not just working by yourself. And again, this is where I'm like, well, with resident teams, we do work as teams, so I don't know if I agree with that. But essentially, that was kind of what they were doing with managers. Collaboration is really important. Identifying with the organization and advocating for the organization is sort of that mentality. So it's important to, as we transition from being individual practitioners to trying to be physician leaders, that you really think, you understand the difference between the two roles. There is a very long talk. If you go to the Academic Hospitals Academy, you'll listen to this talk by Jeff Lachine, and he gave it again, so I've heard this talk twice. And Sean, you're nodding your head, you probably heard it. Maybe he gives it at SHM as well. He spent several hours on this, so we're not going to go over it in detail, but essentially what he says is if you want to evoke change, you have to have a method for it. And that includes these 8 themes of, you got to have a sense of urgency, right? If it's not urgent, nobody wants to deal with it. We have to have a guiding coalition, so a small group of people that are really going to be champions for it. Doing it by yourself is not going to be that effective. You have to have a vision and a strategy. You got to communicate that well. You got to empower people, get rid of obstacles. Some of this is kind of intuitive. Generating short-term wins was kind of funny. He talks about and actually Sanjay Saint talked about it this Wednesday on Grand Rounds too, is that you gotta have a mini success story in the beginning for your change to snowball into positive. If your first thing is not successful, your pilot or whatever it may be, then your project is kind of done. And Jeff Glasheen will tell you, like, his example was something about he wanted to change vancomycin and some order usage, and the first win that they wanted was just someone uses the order set. A single person uses the order set, and we will eat cake. And so it was such a low-hanging fruit that, of course, he was going to achieve it. It wasn't like, oh, after a month we're going to have X number of percentage do. It was like, someone uses the order set, we're celebrating with cake, and apparently that kind of moves in the right direction, consolidating your gains, and then trying to anchor things in culture. Again, this is kind of vague. Me telling you about this right now doesn't necessarily give you a sense, but the point is that when you go through this Leadership Academy, or if you go to the Academic Hospital Academy, you get a more in-depth explanation of it. So next, another thing I learned about was about strategic planning, and I was like, what does that even mean? What the heck is strategic planning? And apparently the differentiation is strategic planning versus business planning versus operational planning. So I had said you need to have a business argument, but you also need to have something sort of before that. And that's really thinking what your dreams are. So what is our strategy? Where do we want to go? What is our competitive edge for that? Like, what is the strategy to get there? And then you have to start thinking about the business component of things. Who's going to pay for it? Who are my key players to support me in this process, whether it's higher up in the administration or the sort of rank and file who are going to support me in this, or both. And then the operational plan is really the nitty-gritty details of like what and the timelines and those sorts of things. So the plans come in multiple different forms, and that was sort of my takeaway there. Framework, visionary, short and conceptual. Business plan, driven by your data, so that's where we call Jordan and his IT folk and say, like, what's the data to make the argument that I need to do XYZ thing? Why do I think I will be profitable? What do I think my measurements are? And actually they said, ironically, in the business plan, half the time your projections are wrong, but it's the idea that you even go through that activity in order to just have you thought about it is more important than the actual accuracy of it. And then operational plan is okay, how is it actually going to work? What am I actually measuring? Talk a little about SWOT analysis. So this is really looking at strengths and weaknesses, which are, if you have an idea or you want some kind of change or you have some proposal, what are the internal strengths and weaknesses, and what are the things on the outside that are going to make it possible or not possible? So that was one concept that we went over, as well as SMART goals, which you guys should all know about because we do them for our biannual reviews. So it's making sure that your goal has all these characteristics, that they're specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, results-oriented, and you have a timeline for it. Spent some time talking about culture. So culture is really the thing that works for us because, for instance, I really like Russia's culture, but it also works against us in that inertia sets in and things that we may want to change may not change. There was an interesting concept that was also that part of the reason we don't have great hospitals is because we actually have pretty good hospitals, and so that kind of gets to the culture of inertia, like, oh, this is actually pretty good enough. And that may be the reason that you're not getting the change that you want, is because actually it's not bad. Could be better. Your idea might make it better, but until it's really a problem, people may not have that motivation to change. And then so to avoid pitfalls, you want to anchor your strategy in a vision, in the culture of your institution and what people value. You definitely want to get diverse ideas from others so that they can point out any pitfalls, things that might be working against you, threats to your idea. Engaging key stakeholders, having a guiding coalition, people who are going to champion it. Figure out who has the authority to make decisions related to what you're doing, and then we all have to hold each other accountable. So, and that will happen if you have the key stakeholders, if you have a guiding coalition, if everyone's kind of been included in your ideas. And then this was sort of the last section. knowing your own style. So those of you who've been around for a couple, we did this last year. Nina brought this to us, which was pretty cool. And those of you who are new may not have seen this disc. I thought it was really neat. I remember Maya and I, we were both Ds, and Chad too.
And Jeff.
And Jeff, yeah. So we were the Ds, the dominant, very impatient ones. But essentially we go through the survey and you get to learn which one you are, the D-I-S-C. And actually, this one was a little different than what we brought to faculty development when I did it at SHM Leadership Academy. They subcategorized into like if you're like a D-I or D-S-C, and they have all these numbers, and they even went more specific into knowing who you are. And they talk a little bit about how you should interact with people who are of a different style. And it's not that any of these one styles is better or other, although I'd argue that dominant number sounds good, but here we are.
Actually, it's behavior, it's not who you are.
Oh, it's behavioral thing. So then
Dominant behavioral patterns.
That's right. It's just the choice. All the other ones sound very neutral and happy, but dominant. I'm getting a little distracted here. It's a disc.
A little defensive.
And a little defensive, maybe. Basically, the idea is that you work through, figure out what your preferred behavioral style is, and if you recognize what other people's behavioral style is, you might be able to have more harmony in your interactions. Influenced ideas and conscientiousness being the other ones. In the interest of time, I'm just going to kind of skip over that, but the PowerPoint will be available if you want to see it afterwards. And working together, lots of different styles. We can all work together, even if we're not all preferring the same behavior initially, as long as we have, this is kind of intuitive, mutual respect, trust, willingness to adapt, and then just insight. So I think even knowing that these different styles exist can be very helpful. If you're reaching a wall with somebody, you're like, oh, well, maybe they just approach the world a little bit differently than I do, or their baseline, their preferred backup behavior is different than mine. And then the last talk that we had that also took several hours that I'm going to put in one slide is about negotiation styles. So really, you have on the y-axis assertiveness and the x-axis cooperativeness. And depending on kind of where you are, we fall into 5 different categories. The best one being what I start up in green, collaborating, where you're expanding your ideas and you're achieving win-win outcomes because both sides are being assertive, both sides are cooperating. If you don't have that, for instance, if one person is being really, or they're being really assertive but not cooperating, you have competing. So that's a zero-sum game, that's not awesome. Avoiding is if nobody's cooperating but you're not being assertive, that's sort of the passive-aggressive world. Compromising is where we often fall into play, where we're kind of cooperating, kind of not, kind of being assertive, kind of not. It's okay, but not as good as collaborating. And then accommodating is sort of the person that's just like, I don't want to fight with you, and you can just have what you want, but it's hard to achieve change if you're just going to accommodate, or really achieve true harmony and things like that. So that was kind of talking about different negotiation styles. So that was my very, very quick whirlwind into what SHM Leadership Academy Strategic Essentials does in 3 to 4 days. Just a little bit about my experience, taking a step back. I thought it was really neat. So they put you in a room of maybe about 100 people, and then you're in individual tables that you sometimes break away and do teamwork activities. And I'm used to interacting with other physicians. We're lucky we have some APPs and nurse practitioners to give us a little bit more perspective. But I was kind of surprised there were also MBAs there, administrators at the same Leadership Academy, listening to the same talks as I was. And people were from a mix of hospitals. There were some rural, there was some urban, there was academic, there were community. And that kind of variety is just really interesting to listen to because everyone I know is like you guys, like we're all in academics and we all have a similar idea, and it's really interesting to hear what else is out there. And it's also kind of interesting to hear how we're all facing the same stresses, and you don't feel so alone, and you don't feel like, or at least for me, I don't feel like it's just a RUH problem or it's just a me problem. It suddenly becomes, oh, we're all in this together. So that's kind of neat. And then they each have a leader, and mine happened to be the next SHM president, and I thought that was kind of cool too, because now I have her email, and I was chatting with her when I had some questions from like a mentorship standpoint. And really nice. And then the meal times, the thing about these things, academic hospitals academy for sure, they make it very campy and you just go and you eat meals together. But it's nice because we learn about all sorts of things. Nina and I networked with the Alabama folks about procedures and just meeting a lot of different people over meals. People tend to be very chatty and not necessarily just stick with their own, which is really, really nice. And we spent some time, like I was saying, with some community hospitalists. I was like, man, these people, they do so much out at Kaiser. Like they're doing neuro exams and procedures up and down and just kind of out of control. So I always feel really inspired when I'm just talking to other people about their lives. Personal takeaways, I think we all could potentially be great leaders in healthcare. We need to be business-minded though, and I think that's one of our biggest challenges. And we need to think like managers and understand the difference between what we do on the wards and how, what skill set we need to be leaders. I don't think we should forget our professional roots. If anything, this is our biggest asset. Think about strategies that you can learn to go from being that individual practitioner to the physician leader. And then, like I said, one of the best things about attending conferences is just coming back and being like, I love it here. I always feel happier about my job every time I go elsewhere and I feel, oh, you have to deal with that? I don't have to deal with that. Or sometimes it's the opposite. I'm like, that's a really good idea. We should bring that over here. We don't have that, but it's nice to know that it exists out there and it's possible. And then the other thing is I was saying, like, I think we do really great faculty development here because half the stuff I felt I learned, I was like, I know this stuff already, and it's because someone at RUH had talked to me about it already. So continuing to have the faculty development, I think, is pretty useful. And thank you, Shanu, for putting all that together. And Manya, that's true. Yes, everybody. And everyone who does faculty development, which I think is a lot of people around this table. And then who should attend, again, you want to grow your career. If you've already been the Academic Hospitals Academy, this is sort of the next step. Or if you've kind of outgrown it yourself. Developing concrete techniques is one reason to go. Understanding the state of hospital medicine, your role within it. Retreats are nice. So there's a lot of other leadership programs, and some of them require a longitudinal component. And I've always wanted to do that, but I just never have the time. So I like this because it's 3 days and then done, and I've completed it. And then if you just like meeting other people in the field, and when you go to the national meeting, like I said, it's nice to be like, oh, I remember you from this thing, and we had lunch together, things like that. All right, that was really fast. Those are the faculty. This is us hanging out. That's the other, I guess, great thing is that it's a really nice time just bonding with your other colleagues at RUH. All right, questions? Whirlwind?
You know, one thing that's interesting is that we have a business person in our group, like David, and Joel beforehand, which I think, I didn't realize the value of that until I started sitting in the leadership meetings. I think it's really important to have that perspective in the health systems management, which in my previous job we didn't, but I was in GME. So I don't know, do you guys in GME have, like, what's your business perspective and how do you?
I think, well, maybe mine could corroborate, but I'm probably the only one that interfaces with it. I don't know if you guys feel like you.
This plan.
Yeah, I don't think they feel like. I certainly as an APD, I didn't have to, look at budgets and things like that. And, so generally, it's. And I would say probably right now it's at the all-time high of autonomy for the educators to have control compared to the past where I think it was sort of like, here's what you're going to do, from the chair's perspective. So, but I think that is a more modern way that works now. I mean, I think a lot of big academic places have vice chairs of education, many of which are the medicine program director, who's one of the main charges is then interfacing with the financial people. There's not much. It's a hard realization to understand that that's everything. Like, we abstractly think of power, but it's actually just budgetary control, And you look at leaders like, oh, that's the boss, but why? And I was listening, I might have told this to somebody in this room, but I was listening to this TED Talk just coincidentally one time, very recently, and it was about leadership, and it was trying to answer this question of why in the world does it exist, first of all? Why does a group of people, why does a group finally decide there needs to be a leader? And then how does it arise organically? And, through whatever sociology they've studied it, the answer is no matter how, if you have 10 people and one establishes leadership and you cut them in half into 5s, then the group of 5 without a leader will figure out a new one, and it'll kind of endlessly go down in very small groups. So it's naturally within us, pretty much everybody, to do it, and it's not magical. It's more even leadership traits or styles are when people are queried about what they like in a leader. A lot of times it's attributions that are made after the fact of deciding that you like the person who's the leader, or you don't like the person who's the leader. So there's not even really a consistency to what they are or what management styles are. So it's something more basic to how we relate to each other.
There's a lot of stuff studied in leadership, right? And the Harvard Business Review has great books, have a lot of interesting information in them, and you're right, like there's no one thing.
Right.
I think emotional intelligence in general people talk about is probably one of the highest things to have as a leader, but everything else is learned. Even emotional intelligence can be learned to some degree.
Yeah, just to, I think, I'm not gonna talk much, but I think one of the, looking back on the sessions that I attended in influential management and managing teamwork, I think there are things that are very nuanced to being a leader that are very difficult skills to teach in like a setting like this. And then there are hard skills. And so what I thought would be useful with this is I think, if anything, if you're interested in being a leader, I think knowing the hard skills first and then how to speak the language of the people that hold the money and the resources is probably step 1. And then steps 2 and 3 and 4, which I think you probably would need to go to this leadership academy for, or, once you have that idea and you've made the business case for and you have the resources, then how do you motivate your team to buy into your idea? How do you sell the idea? How do you get that idea to propagate across the institution and be successful? So I have this activity, and I think it's from a business school. It's a real life case. Do you guys all have a copy of this? So it's basically a real life case about a hospital in Wisconsin and how they kind of started thinking about developing a hospice program. So there's some questions at the end. I thought maybe it's a little dense, the reading, but I think we could do it in like 15 minutes. So if you guys want to take 15 minutes and read it, and then we can kind of talk through the questions at the end together rather than doing them in small groups. That might be the most time efficient. There's some more copies down here. All right, let's start talking. So I think the first reason I like this exercise is because it makes us look really good. But
Because they want a hospital program?
well, just like how inefficient they were with that lady with the pneumonia, this would never happen at RUH. But I think the other end of it is, I think the goal here is, you're probably reading this and you're like, no brainer, like we need past this, so. The question then becomes like, how do you prove that to someone that's sitting up in an office that has 0 clinical, and is not seeing the picture as clearly as you are? So I think you have to make a money case. That's step 1. So if you go to the worksheet where it says making the financial case, so we have to help this guy, Dr. Brewer. I love how expressive they were through this whole case, like Chicken Little. Like, was that
Bill
necessary?
Osler.
Yeah.
Tim Krebs.
But anyways,
Dr. Bell.
I think this is true. Anyway, so Dr. Brewer has to prepare for the next task force. So how much money are you losing at this institution per pneumonia is the first question. So I think that's the first thing you want to figure out the magnitude of the problem. So what's the average Medicare reimbursement per case? It's in there. 5,086. Yeah. And then did you see what the hospital was charging?
Yes, 60,000.
It's 5,891.
61,000.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, okay.
Where are these numbers?
It's in here. They don't highlight the numbers, but the numbers are,
Yeah.
so basically it's the average Medicare reimbursement is $5,086 for pneumonia DRG. And this hospital is paying about 5,891. So what's your loss per case? You don't have to do the math, I'll tell you. $805. So if CHMC had 114 discharges, what is your annual loss for that DRG? It's a lot, it's $91,000. It's $91,770 that they're losing on pneumonia. Okay. So how would you improve it? So you're saying hospice might be the solution, so what would hospitals do? They could decrease the length of stay and maybe make things happen more efficiently, right? So what is the length of stay opportunity in terms of improvement potential for CHMC. Okay, you can use data. So I think in there should be the Medicare geometric mean length of stay for this DRG.
6.4 versus 4.9.
Yeah, yeah. So what's your opportunity?
So the difference.
A day and a half,
Yeah.
essentially, so it's 1.5. So then what's your dollar savings? If you reduced your length of stay with hospice by a day and a half to the mean, how much are you saving?
800 times.
It says the average direct cost per day, it's in there, is about 400 bucks.
That's right.
So if your length of stay
600.
opportunity is 1.5, 400 bucks direct cost per day, and then 114 discharges. So your potential savings is about $68,400. Okay?
Minus hospice salary.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. But then how does this potential savings compare to your net? So you were negative 91,000 on the DRG. So you're only saving 68,000 on decreasing length of stay. So you're still losing money on this DRG. You're still negative 23,770. So this is where, and this is some of the fun of being a leader, is like what else? So okay, reducing length of stay isn't enough, right, to make this DRG profitable. So what else could you do?
Prevent the ICU utilization, the decreased ICU utilization.
Yeah, I think the first thing that they came up with was maybe if you decrease your length of stay, you're decreasing your nursing staffing, and so you're gonna save on some nursing. So they wanted you to kind of go through what you would save on nursing. So if you look at the opportunity for savings in terms of how many nurses you would need dedicated to that DRG, your length of stay opportunity in hours, which is just, it's 36 hours, 1.5 days. Then you have 114 annual discharges. And then they give you right up there 1880 total hours per nursing FTE for the year. So that's 1880 hours. And a nurse takes care of about 4 patients. So divide that by 4 for an individual patient ratio. And then basically what it comes out to is about 0.54 FTE savings you would have in nurse staffing or nurse resources that you could allocate elsewhere. And then you put you figure out, there's the hourly wages of the nurses, and you figure out 0.54 of 1880, what that is, then multiply it by the nursing wage. So you're saving another $42,660.
While putting it towards additional
Something,
admissions
yeah.
that happen.
Correct.
for
Or other
DRGs.
agencies, yeah, that you're getting money for. So then the bottom line is, how much are they losing average per case? We talked about it's $805. What's your annual total profit loss? About $91,000. Your length of stay reduction is 1.5 days. You'd only save 68,000. It's not enough. So reductions alone won't make the DRG profitable. Reducing nursing would help and would get you to profitability, at least in this case. So if you were trying to sell, so you have these numbers and you bring them, so if you're gonna try this, sell this case to a chief financial officer or something, what would you use as your hook? What's your, what would you lead with?
Being profitable.
Sure. And I think you're getting your biggest bang for your buck with the length of stay, even though it's not taking you to solvency. So maybe being like, hey, I could save you $68,000 per year by just decreasing your length of stay. Plus, you're not also accounting for the extra, like now you're getting another DRG in that bed and making money during that time, which you weren't making money before. So that would be a good hook to get someone intrigued. What other financial metrics would you consider, or would you want to put together in this case?
Readmission.
What you're losing on readmissions, yeah, like that, they lost like $8,000 on that case and got no reimbursement for that, so.
And the opportunity benefit, like you were saying, you could then have a patient in that bed that would actually
Be
make
paying,
Yeah.
yep.
And also, there were some mistakes here that are quality specific
Mhm.
that hospitals generally excel at. So like antibiotic,
Mhm.
door to antibiotic time here was significantly delayed, which one could argue pushed her into the ICU, so there might be better outcomes.
Resource utilization.
Yeah.
And yeah, how do we quantify? So your cost per DRG would be another thing to look at, like how much are you spending right now per these patients that are getting admitted? And you hypothesize how much a hospitalist would be able to decrease that. Because say they're not going to the ICU now, they're going to GMF, or now you've just significantly decreased your costs. Anything else? You're not going to have financial facts for anything, for everything. So you want to sell this hospice program. What other things might you put into your plan?
Again, talking about just length of stay, there was 3 days that we didn't even talk about sick placement. You know, it was like that, those lost days are avoidable days that way.
So you're getting the date, that's your hook, so you're
Patient
basically.
satisfaction.
Yeah,
That's
basically.
interesting, yeah.
If they get better faster, they'll feel better. Like, oh, it took a week to get better? Like, I was out in 3 days and feeling much better. I also think, don't hospitals get reimbursed slightly different based off of the patient satisfaction? So like,
At the-
extra little 1%.
At the end of the year.
Yeah, at the end of the year,
overall.
but, you know, net over time, that would make a difference.
Yep, yeah. Other thoughts, how you would pitch this plan for hospice program?
They had mentioned something about physician engagement, and I wonder if somehow like being on site versus having providers that are not on site, like they might be able to engage the physicians more easily. These are,
Well, I mean, the extubation is delayed because no one was around.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure that a hospital is doing nice, I mean,
Happens some places.
I think some, yeah, depending on the program.
Yeah,
but.
yeah, but I think, but you get the sense of it, like you
Yeah.
have to think in terms of like, what have you done for me? And how do you quantify what you're going to do for me? And that's how you get people to kind of at least take your idea seriously and be willing to put the resources into your idea. And so that's why I thought this was a cool example of, from the perspective of a business person. Why would I invest in hospitalists, which obviously lots of people do, and there is a business case to be made, but when you're making that initial investment, starting up with even like 5 or 6 doctors, you have a small group, that's still an expensive, over $1 million proposition that you're asking for someone to invest. So you have to be able to be very clear about the gains that you're expecting from that. So I think if there was a takeaway for me from this leadership academy, it was, you know, some of the fun, I think, of being a leader is being able to have like a bigger, and I think as hospitals we like to think systems-wide and, you know, look at the things that are going wrong in our regular clinical practice and think of creative ways to improve it. But then it's taking the next step from like having this cool idea of like, you know, why don't we check C. diff on every person that walks in the door to decrease our C. diff rates, to like, how do you sell that idea? How much does it cost to check C. diff on every person that walks through our doors to make sure it's not a hospital acquired, to make sure it's not present on admission? And then how much are you saving by decreasing our C. diff rate? And that's also taking into account the lab, the micro, all the resources you would need on the back end. So it's kind of taking the next step. And then like the third step would be, once you get the resources for your idea, like I said before, you have this great idea, now you have to get people to buy into it. And how do you take your idea with all your resources, like we did with the non-teaching service like 5 years ago, bring it to the group and be like, hey, okay, we're gonna do this, we've got resources to do it, and then now we have to convince people to do it. Why do it? What are the benefits? What's the fun? And continuously refine it until you get it to a point where people are happy and it's also serving its business case. So that's it in a nutshell for me. I don't know if you guys have any questions.
One thing I had asked, because I felt like mine was very overview and not as practical, was like, I don't have a degree in business and these numbers, where I get them. People were saying that actually just a little back of the napkin kind of calculation is often good enough. It's not so much that you have to have this Excel spreadsheet with all accurate numbers, but you need to know approximately, like, to retrain a hospitalist, it's $200,000. Like, is it 186 or 212? I have no idea, but like something along those lines, just enough to get them to be interested in, and then maybe put some resources to finding the actual numbers for your institution. Another thing I learned is that, yeah, sometimes it isn't intuitive. Like, oh, we might be saving a lot of money on C. diff because we come down, but if we spent like so much money trying to prevent it, then we actually net didn't make any money or save any money if even we get paid more because we spent so much on the back end. But back of the envelope calculations.
I mean, that's why I think that is your idea validator. Like Shobha and I were actually talking to ID today about, you know, would it help if we had micro data available earlier in the day? And so if they invested in a tech to run culture data and we had our sensitivities by 10 a.m. in the morning rather than 2 p.m., would that help with length of stay? I mean, anecdotally, to me, it sounds great. We'd have to, so I think what we have to do is we have to quantify now, like, what is that population of patients that are sitting till 2 or 3 p.m. With no progression of their care plan until that data is available, and then contrast it with the cost that it's going to take to have another tech that's going to be available in the micro lab to have that data, have it available at And
So that's
the
really
resources.
fascinating,
Yeah.
because 2 years ago, they did the whole biofire thing.
Right.
And
They talked
then
about
I
that
just
too,
found out that
yeah.
it got taken away
But they said it
because
wasn't working.
it hadn't saved any money.
Yeah.
It hadn't done anything.
Yeah.
So like, because I actually called yesterday to be like, oh, this can probably be run through biofires, it can stop the bank for probably what's called negative staff. And then one of the pharmacists was like, oh, I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
I think as hospitals, we have tons of really good ideas, and I think the step from like physician to physician leader is taking that idea and then kind of putting some numbers to it, selling it, and getting buy-in. Which I found that this conference is really helpful for giving you different ways of how to do that and develop your own style, because every leader is different and has their own strengths and weaknesses. So how do you play to your strengths and do what you're doing?
And I do just want to put in a plug for SJM Lead that Shobha is doing now and that I did a couple of years ago. It's another leadership fellowship. It's a 1-year program rather than a 3-day intensive. And it's through SJM. It's more sort of academic and useful for someone like me who's more interested in the education piece than necessarily saving money. So it's much, I can talk to you more in detail if you're interested in something like that. I thought it was really cool. I really loved it. I made a lot of great connections that I've ended up doing some scholarship with over time. So if that's something of interest to you, it's really worth doing.
I will say also, just like Scott was saying, you're protected a lot of times from the financial aspect of the education world, but there is someone that is monitoring and making sure that, there's a reason that academic places invest in residency programs, and it's not just because it's like the right thing to do or you want to train the next generation, but that there's funds coming in that are helping subsidize the hospital's costs. And so knowing that background helps you sell. I think it's just, the whole thing is putting yourself in someone else's shoes and understanding their drivers, their motivators, and speaking their language to get what.
Yeah, we had a
You
little
want.
piece of that
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a place you can go as an individual practicing physician, and it's like a fork in the road, and you can be in a place like this and say, that's not my area, I don't care about the numbers or whatever, or you can just ask a lot of questions and put yourself in a situation to get developed without actually paying a dime. Just soak in things from your environment, because we're around all of it. So that's what I would say is, it's not really a leadership trait or skill, but it's a pathway to develop yourself in a way that might make you a little more useful. Because there's a bi-directional aspect of leadership. There's how you look to the people you're leading, but it's also how do you look to the bosses who give you a job. And it's a lot more simplistic on that end than you think. It's like showing up, being present mentally and physically, being on time, looking interested, solving a problem. I mean, a lot of bosses will tell you the one thing they really want is just somebody to just solve one of their thousands of problems that they have. Like, just please bring me a solution, ready-made package, the plan to go, and we can then use the power of the office to do it. It's not how I think I ever thought about it, but I think it's a simplistic but probably useful model. And the one way you do that is just learning all along the way. When I go back and look sometimes at old documents I wrote like in the early 2000s, and they're like trying to justify why this group should exist, like trying to sell it, and it looks so simplistic and amateur to me. And I know that sometimes you get in with that, you build that amateur plan, like we think we kind of can talk the talk. And the truth is, they don't really care how good our analysis is. Like you said, the back of the envelope stuff. It's whether the idea maybe has merit, because they have their own resources to apply. If they want to really business model it out, they can put the resources into doing proper analysis. So they want to know if they want idea generation. And sometimes they're not ready. That's the other thing about being a progressive thinker, like this group is. We see it all the time. We're ahead of ID thinking about when the culture should come back. We're ahead pretty much of everybody in thinking about this care issues. But the rest of the environment's not necessarily ready. So if your idea gets rejected, you should just be too early. That's the thing. But I remember being frustrated a lot. Like, oh, come on. This seems like so much common sense.
Yeah, you definitely lose a lot. And that's okay, because you're gonna win. And when you have a win, it's awesome. It's a cool idea that you thought of that you get to implement. So I don't know. My thought from the leadership standpoint is really fun. It's a fun thing to do. It's a creative way of thinking that you don't get to think every day when you're on the floors and you're seeing patients. So you get to exercise your brain in a different way. And to me, it's a lot of fun solving puzzles and thinking of cool ways to do things, even if no one agrees with me.
And the people you meet, I always think back like, oh, I had a conversation with so-and-so, or like, oh, at Mayo Clinic they do it like this, or why don't we have that? And sometimes it's because Mayo Clinic has a profit margin of like 10 to 15%, and we have a profit margin of like 2%, so we can't get those resources, and sometimes it's understanding that too.
I think that's a big part of it, just understanding your setting and the culture and your limitations.
But then also always being grateful for all the things that we do have. Like here, I remember going to the academic hospitals attending, hearing Johns Hopkins Hospital was running as an attending till 2 a.m. like your senior. I was like, 2 a.m.? Like, that, yeah, that's just like, what the heck is that? And then I was like, oh, I love my job. I don't have to run till 2 a.m. with my senior.
That's the famous program that lost its accreditation, or was on a major probation.
Oh, yeah, so, you know.
Awesome, thanks guys.
Thank you guys.
Awesome.
Always happy to chat afterwards if you're actually interested in it.